Hello there, you're watching the EduTalk show with me, Blessed Sogah. This show is proudly brought to you by the Ministry of Education in partnership with the Teacher Education Journal. This is the show that keeps you updated on all of the issues happening in the education sector. This week, we're focusing on Ghana's education reform with a special focus on the secondary education sector. Why the need for a reform, and why do we have to start off from the second cycle level? Stay with me as I introduce my guest to you and we delve into the matters. You're watching the EduTalk show. It's brought to you by the Ministry of Education in partnership with the Teacher Education Journal. For today, we're looking at some of the reforms in the education sector and what the next steps are. Let me tell you about my guest very quickly. I have Professor Edward Appiah. He's the Director for the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. We do have Mr. Akwasi Addae-Boahene, who's Chief Technical Advisor at T-Tel. No lady here, so I say, gentlemen, welcome to the EduTalk show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start off with you, Akwasi, because I'm sure that you've been watching the trends globally and what's happening around the world. Yeah. Ghana is not an island. Definitely, we need to compare notes and see what's happening, and then, obviously, inculcate that into our system. Yeah. What are you able to say about the trend of education around the world? Where are we heading to? And how can the world catch up, or developing countries such as Ghana, catch up to the trend that's happening elsewhere?
Thank you very much. I think that as a country, we are at a point where we need to be looking critically at what we can do to advance the education for young people in this country. Because as we all know, there are a number of global trends that are influencing the way in which work is developing or emerging or evolving, and also the way in which economies are being run. And so we need to look at how we prepare the next generation of Ghanaians so that they can fit into this global knowledge economy that is evolving. So the first is that there are a number of these factors, and the first includes the issue of automation, digitalization, artificial intelligence, and other factors that are driving what the whole world is becoming. And so we need to ask ourselves whether the kind of education we provide our young people really fits into this frame that would help them participate in the global knowledge economy. The second is the fact that we need to be looking at providing young people with the 21st century skills that would prepare them for life so that they could make life choices and make choices that would indeed advance the general economic development of this country. We also need to be looking critically at how we connect young people across the country to be able to use indigenous knowledge to transform the kind of resources we have in this country. Because if we don't do that, Ghana is going to seriously lag behind in terms of how the world is moving now and how we can catch up and really develop our economy to be able to survive as a country.
I see that Prof. Appiah is simply agreeing with whatever it is that you're saying. But Prof, I also need to say that it's been a busy time for you at your office, particularly when you're working under a sector minister who's worked elsewhere, so knows how the system is operating somewhere else, and so would expect that you'd live up to that standard. What's the NACA story? How has it been for you trying to adjust to this changing times of what's happening in terms of the global trend on education?
All right. Thank you very much. Let me quickly add on to what Kwasi just said, that, globally we are now in another era. We are into an era of AI. We are into an era of industrial revolution. It talks about the knowledge economy. And if we look at it, we have reached Education 4.0 that will require innovation, creativity to catch up. In fact, if we can, the country as a whole can only catch up when we are technologically inclined and when they have a resource or the forces that are able to adapt to technology. And therefore, I think that education can help us to reach that revolutionary age of industrialization by taking advantage of the Education 4.0. And therefore, I think in about 3 years back, the ministry realized the need to take a look at our educational sector. And it is out of that, the reforms, that NACA came out, which used to be 2 sectors under GES, Ghana Education Service. That is the assessment unit and then the curriculum division.
Right.
And so the 2 were put together under the reform, and then NACA came out. Our mandate is to develop curriculum standards and assessment standards that meet the 21st century arena of activity. So far, I must say that yes, we've been managed to live up to expectation. Maybe to the extent that we have looking at the sector, education sector policy that was developed for 2018 to 2030, we think that we are getting there. It's not an easy task, but it's been a busy way of transforming the system. One of the key challenges that we have is to, if we are to take advantage of the sector, is to probably come up with a different framework. And so quickly NACA had to develop 2 frameworks, that is the curriculum framework and then assessment framework. And these 2 frameworks together with the education sector plan is driving our activity.
But I'm sure that you have an immediate to short-term goal, something that you want to at least achieve while you work towards that bigger picture of transforming entirely the education sector. What are some of these key priorities that you're able to share with us?
Okay, within the education sector plan, there were indicators that were set to achieve some proficient level of our kids in the short, medium, and then the long term. In the short and the medium, we have to make sure that this framework that was developed, the curriculum framework was developed, had 4 R's: creativity, reading, arithmetic, and writing. And therefore, these are the challenge things that we are confronting as Ghanaian or Ghanaian children. And therefore, we needed to, as fast as possible, bring the proficiency level of the Ghanaian child as far as reading and arithmetic is concerned to an appreciable level, that we can also imbibe in them the creativity and the innovation that are required. So in the immediate term, or in the short and medium, we needed to make sure, take advantage of the curriculum that we have developed, and which we started with the standard base from KG to primary 6, that have creative pedagogies for which teachers are able to use. You agree with me that the kind of learning that we've been subjected to in the past 10, 12 years was that of a child that needs to have that root learning and is able to rattle his or her way, and we can say that's a brilliant child. But I don't think that is where we are heading to. We need a mind of creativity. We need a mind of innovation. And it's about time we change. And so the new curriculum that we are developing in the short term is preparing us for the medium and the long term, which we can say that the child is not a root learner now, but he's creative enough and he's proficient enough.
And I just want to take you on that point, because you've been in the education sector for quite some time now. I recall that the minister was making such a passionate statement at the United Nations when he said that we cannot memorize our way out of out of poverty, correct? But what has accounted for that over the years? What do you see as that big factor that has always pushed us into memorizing our way?
You know, in education, we have what we call the CIA, curriculum, instruction, and assessments. These are the 3 key pillars in education. Interestingly, assessment, which we mentioned last, drives everything. And if a child knows that, or if everybody knows that I'm going to assess this way, definitely he or she will study towards that. For all those years, we have been used to summative assessment, where you can go through all that you are doing, but at the end of the day, we want to assess and look at it. And so children were now made to memorize, because at the end of the day, I'm going to see how you are going to check how much I've been able to put on. In fact, even in the universities, people might not even go to lectures. They might sit in their homes. But at the end of the day, they can copy the notes from friends and memorize and go. And so all along, this has been driving us. Our assessment had not been a good thing. Thankfully, NACA had developed a new assessment framework which looks at assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment.
And we'll be going into that shortly, but Akwasi, the point Prof raised about where the world is shifting towards now, he says education 4.0. Yeah. Some say that we're not even closer to 3.5, 2.5. I don't know what your own assessment will be.
I think, like he said, and just marrying what he said and what I shared with you, I think that there are three key things that we are struggling with now, and that is the response that NACA is giving us. Right. First is about the access to secondary education, which needs to be opened up and expanded in such a way that we can have as many young people as possible entering into secondary education, because that is where you acquire all the basic skills for life. Yeah. Because at that point you are getting to adulthood. From secondary school you are getting to adulthood and either the world of work, or you are going into further studies, or you need to live an adult life. So we need to provide that access. That is partly done through the policy of government. The second thing is the relevance of what they learn when they are in the school. And again, NACA is responding to that. So we are partly addressing that. Then the third factor is how do we ensure that there is equity in the system? Okay. Equity in terms of access. Equity in terms of the ability of every child to be given the opportunity to learn and achieve their fullest potential or not. Because if we don't do this, then it means that we are not going to be able to get into the fourth industrial revolution, as he's saying, which is driven by artificial intelligence, it's driven by automation, and is driven by digitalization and all that. So we need to be able to expand in such a way that we carry everybody along, so that we don't use examinations as a way of getting people out of the system.
Are you saying there shouldn't be examinations? Because if you say that, that'll be hooray for most of the children who are in our schools.
I think Prof mentioned something. Okay. I'll come back to that. But what I'm saying is that we need to provide equitable access to ensure that every child achieves to their fullest potential. The current assessment system we have doesn't do that. It only tells you you've qualified to go to tertiary, you've not qualified, so you are out. Right. And there's nothing for you to do. Unless
so how to refine
unless you resit and resit and resit and also be able to go. Right. So what we are saying is that our school system should provide spaces for everybody to be achieving what they are capable of achieving. So that if I don't achieve to do continuous education, I can achieve to go into the world of work or to live a responsible adult life. That is where we should be going. And that is the only way we can say that we are preparing ourselves as a country to be able to get into the fourth industrial revolution.
Okay, you know what? Here's the big question. So if we're to transform Ghana's education sector, where should we start from? We'll deal with that after this break. You're watching the EduTalk Show. We'll be right back. And it's a great joy to still have you watching the EduTalk Show. Of course, we're still on that conversation surrounding reforming the education sector. Our focus is on the secondary education and what the next steps should be for us. Let me, of course, tell you about my guest. If you missed it from the beginning, I have Professor Edward Appiah, Director General of NACA, and Mr. Akwasi Addae-Boahene is Chief Technical Advisor at T-Tel. So I want us now to zoom into Ghana, and I mean specifically what practical measures and next steps we should be taking in reforming our own story. The trajectory has been that, well, we've been doing rote learning and that's all there is to it. We need to transform. So if indeed we are transforming, where do we start off from? And Prof, that's where I want to start off with you. What practical steps are you taking to change the narrative?
I think earlier on, I told you that the ESP 2018-2030 gave us the mandate also to look at what is wrong and what needs to be done. And therefore, NACA developed a new curriculum framework that was used to set up or to start the reform of transforming our curriculum. And so NACA had developed a standard-based curriculum, which is now being implemented in the primary schools. Now, what is in, and I indicated earlier, is to use creative pedagogies to train children or learners to be able to acquire the necessary skills that is needed. Now, within that space, and as we earlier indicated, this revolution that we are engaging in, I mean, this industrial revolution of 4.0, education 4.0,
right,
will require that we double up, we increase our technological advancement and knowledge. And it requires resources, I mean human resources, that are capable of doing that. And so this curriculum that we are running is running on a STEM wheel. What it means is that from KG to P6 is STEM infected. We want to see every child, whether you are in the humanities or whatever, be able to have an idea, have an insight into science, technology, and mathematics, which can help you to transform your life. Remember, in life, or if we can catch up, we need to have a very high level of tertiary enrollment. As we stand now, majority of the people that come from basic to SHS, and as Chrissy was saying, majority of them don't even find their way in there. So our tertiary enrollment rate is poor, and we need to expand and get a pool of people who we can hold on to and say that if I'm looking for people who can help me transform my education set, I have the pool of them. If I take 100 people, I can only train 30 into the tertiary, then I might as well stop.
And so the opinions have been divided on where we should be starting. Of course, I'm sure you've heard those who are so upbeat about access. Some believe, let's open the floodgates, let's allow everyone to go in. At least, if they come through the system, they would have picked up some lessons one way or the other. Some say, let's stress on the quality. Others say, let's deal with infrastructure. What's paramount and what's key for you at now?
They are all key. Now, having access does not necessarily mean playing down on quality. Of course, the standard-based curriculum, and let me make it a little bit easier for you to understand. Right. When we say we are running a standard-based education, it does not necessarily mean that anybody at all can run through and get it done. What it means is that we have a proficiency level for which we think that if any child is able to achieve that proficiency level, it's good enough for the child to go on. What are we doing to make that happen? I mean, in a typical mechanic shop, every day or every month, somebody comes to learn how to work, I mean, in a seamstress shop. But you can only go out as a qualified apprentice who have qualified when you achieve that basic thing. And so you can be there for a year, somebody can come within 2 or 3 months, he'll be able to acquire that faster and go. What it means is that we need to now create space, as Chrissy was saying, for people who are talented, should not be retarded. They should have a space for even gifted and talented to upskill and move on. And that is what the standard-based education is. And we are giving space to access everybody, equity. So it does not necessarily mean that you have to be somebody who can rattle A, B, C, D. But in your own space, you should be able to demonstrate some proficiency of talent. And then we can move you upskill. And that is what we are doing to make sure that we give access to everybody. We create the space for anybody at all, whether he's coming from east or west or north and south. But the most important thing is that the curriculum that we have developed is strong enough to give you that proficiency level for which, when you go through, you can say that.
And we'll be talking about some of the practical considerations you'll be making as we reform and, of course, roll out that policy plan. But, Akwasi, for you, and I was just talking about how divided the opinion is out there. Of course, you, the expert, would never end in terms of the arguments that you side with. But what's key for you in terms of where we should be starting from? Some say, well, I mean, this system has produced great minds for the world.
We could have produced better. We could have produced more.
So right. So where do you stand on
for me, the debate about access or quality isn't here or there.
Right.
I mean, those are not the issues. As a country, we need to develop and agree on the purpose and the vision that we have for young people, for our education system. What is the purpose and the relevance of what we want to give our young people? That should be properly understood and agreed on. Then how do we expand access to ensure that everybody who has the ability is able to develop their own, to their fullest potential, if you want? And then how do we set up institutions that are properly managed in such a way that they become learning centers for these young people who go there? All those factors are pieces of the same puzzle that we need to be able to put together.
Do we do everything at the same time?
You have to be looking. We are a poor country, I know.
Right.
We don't have all the resources, but we need to be looking at all these different pieces, because if you open access to everybody and you don't pay attention to the others, you are just doing damage to the many people you are putting into the school. The same way, if you build infrastructure and you are not able to touch on the other factors, you will still not be able to answer the questions. So we need to also be looking at the way in which we teach children. Where teachers stand in the classroom to just give notes and for kids to memorize, like Prof said, is not the solution right now. How do children also learn? We know if you are in a home and you have kids, you will see that children learn two different ways. They learn by doing, by playing together, by asking questions, by developing things themselves. And those opportunities need to be given within our school system to allow kids to acquire multiple skills and competencies so that they can thrive and survive and develop to their fullest potential. Then one thing that is also very critical is the fact that the delivery of education is a multi-stakeholder function. The Ministry of Education alone is not able to provide the kind of education that is envisaged under this new industrial revolution or fourth industrial revolution era. It's not possible, because we need to be bringing in stakeholders like industry, employers, artisans, so that everybody, parents, so that everybody plays a role.
In fact, I was just about bringing that up, that in as much as we're creating this new curriculum, we know that the end game is the student. There are stakeholders involved, the teachers, the parents. Of course, the experts are also watching. So who do we focus on? Who do we listen to? Because the parents also, and Prof, maybe you can touch on that. The parents have an expectation. Civil society has an expectation. Government has an expectation. Everyone has an expectation.
Right. Like Kwesi said, in education, you can't leave one out. You have to do so many things at the same time to achieve the success. And therefore, we needed to speak with stakeholders. We had to speak with industry. I'm an association of Ghanaian industries. We had a chat with them. They need to tell us the kind of products they want to see. We met vice chancellors of Ghana. We want to see the kind of products they want to see in their schools. We met even with the students, and they also shared their experiences with us. Parents. Indeed, we need all these people to bring you something that they want to see in the coming years. And those are the things that NACA have been doing, trying to engage stakeholders to make sure that these ideas that we are picking from industries, we even had to meet College of Education, teachers and College of Education, vice chancellors of technical university, because these are critical stakeholders in. And almost all the time, they were hammering on common issues. We are fed up with root learners. We are fed up with people who are not creative. We want to see people who can be trained easily or can be retrained easily. And these are the things that we've put together.
But in reconciling all of that would then be setting a new assessment threshold. And that's why I want to also bring you back, Prof. What are we doing to our examination system under this new curriculum?
I earlier on
Right.
indicated that the assessment framework that we've developed looks at 3 basic assessment. Assessment as learning, assessment for learning, and assessment of learning. And these are key things. We are no more going to look at summative assessment. And I'm not saying summative assessment is not good enough. At a point, you will need to assess somebody summatively to see. But if we put all the weight on summative, we missed it. And the new curriculum that we are running, even in the standard, the primary, and then the common core in the JHS, it's not looking at summative assessment. We are looking at even peer review, peer assessment. Children learn and they play and they assess themselves because they think that they all have to move along. And that is the kind of assessment regime that we are coming in.
And you know what? We need to do a part 2 of this. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Let me give the final words to Akwasi. Of course, as you, of course, do that, the point about this not being African enough, and that, well, it's Western. Why do we want to copy what's happening elsewhere?
It's not, we are not talking about Western or African here. We are talking about preparing young people of this country to be able to participate in the global knowledge economy. Because the world is driving towards a point where natural resources alone, possession of natural resources in a country alone cannot make the country a developed country. So there are some countries who have no resources, they have knowledge, and they've expanded their knowledge economy to the extent that they are leading economies now. So we cannot wait until we are getting everybody back to school and learning what they are supposed to be learning and then achieving their fullest potential. That is where we should be going.
Prof, are we getting there?
Surely we are getting there. It doesn't mean that we are there yet. No,
Right.
we still have some challenges. But it tells you that the things that we are putting in place are actually yielding the results.
And this is why it's called the EduTalk Show. I'm grateful to Professor Edward Appiah, Director General of NACA. Thank you for joining us. And Akwasi Addae-Boahene, Chief Technical Advisor at T-Tel. I'm grateful, gentlemen, that you've been able to join us on the EduTalk Show. I am blessed as Sogah. And of course, you see us once more on your screens when we bring you another edition of the EduTalk Show. It's brought to you by the Ministry of Education in partnership with the Teacher Education Journal. Bye-bye for now.